Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar for today. My name is Ronald Bautista. We'll be talking about the new multicultural hyperlocal digital strategies for national advertisers. Just to go over a few things, the questions will be addressed at the end. You can, we're going to be receiving all those questions through the chat that's on the right of your screen, on the right bottom. So you can submit them on your chat, and we'll be answering. Our speakers will be answering at the end. Also, you can feed your comments, take notes with the hashtag new multicultural, and you can also mention MaxPoint online at Twitter. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Marcos Baez from Portada.
Thank you, Ronald. Great to be in touch with you all. We are more than almost close to 300 attendees to the webinar, which shows how interesting and how exciting the theme of reaching multicultural audiences through hyperlocal digital strategies really is. And we're also very happy to have Gonzalo Del Fa, President at Group M Multicultural, and Susan Lee, VP Corporate Development at MaxPoint, as our speakers. Also wanted to tell you that what is important is that this conversation doesn't end at this webinar. We will be able to answer questions towards the end of the webinar, but also later on, if your question doesn't get answered, it will be either Gonzalo or Susan will be able to answer it later. We will continue to publish thought leadership articles on our website, portada-online.com, and even in person, we have our annual conference on September 16 and 17, which is hashtag Portada15, and we hope to see many of you there too. We know that MaxPoint definitely is going to have an important presence there, and so will Gonzalo. I'm really privileged to introduce Gonzalo. Gonzalo, who was born in Argentina, actually, like myself, but has been living many years in the U.S., is the president of Group M Multicultural and plays a key role in all aspects of the multicultural media and marketing efforts initiated by Group M agencies. And there you have major agencies, media buying agencies like Maxus, MEC, Mediacom, and Mindshare. To give you an idea of the importance of Gonzalo's position and also of the agencies he manages, he handles 500 million in billings from clients such as AT&T, Unilever, Conagra, Colgate, and many others. Just 500 million. Sorry, not just 500 million a year in billings from these and our clients. The other great person we have here today is Susan Lee, VP Corporate Development at MaxPoint. Susan has a lot of knowledge about the multicultural, and particularly the Hispanic realm within the multicultural markets. She worked in ad sales leadership team at Univision, where she successfully launched the first national television Hispanic advanced advertising initiative. Before Univision, Susan worked at Viacom MTV Networks, at AOL, the Walt Disney Company, and she also has a strong financial analyst background, which made it possible for her to be working at Morgan Stanley at the investment. So after this presentation, we want to quickly go over what we're going to look at today when we talk about hyperlocal digital strategies for national advertisers. We have the current landscape we're going to discuss, then where digital approaches are happening today. After that, what hyperlocal really means and how it works, what advantages it offers competitively, success stories, and finally, what our panelists think is going to happen next. So my first question for Gonzalo is, Gonzalo, can you tell us a little bit about multicultural marketing today? What is keeping multicultural multicultural marketers up at night? Retailers asking for when they come to your agency with their programs?
Well, I think that there are different things that clients are asking for. I think the main and the most important thing that we're discussing pretty often now with clients is how their multicultural efforts actually contribute to their overall marketing and sales goals. So multicultural became part of a much larger part of their business, and this is not just a nice to have, this is a need which is essential of the overall marketing strategy, and marketers really want to know how their efforts are actually impacting their goals. So on one hand, we have some clients trying to understand the opportunity, some of the clients trying to understand the trends and where this market is going. I would say that some of the newcomers, because we still have new people coming into the multicultural business, they really want to know how to start, how to navigate the waters, and actually how to effectively engage with this consumer. And what they expect from the agency is, a deep knowledge and understanding of the multicultural communities, what is the right way to talk to them, strategic thinking, and most importantly, to have multicultural, as I said before, as part of their overall strategy. This is not something that works on silos. This is not an afterthought anymore. This is part of the overall marketing strategy. Multicultural represents today a big chunk of the consumers, not to mention that many clients are talking about millennials, and we all know that almost 50% of millennials are multicultural, so they cannot just think about this as a last in line kind of initiative or an independent initiative that they can think separated from the overall marketing effort.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Susan, you are in the daily work in terms of new digital approaches and the ones that have been used and are currently being used. How are multicultural marketers currently addressing these complexities, using traditional publishers' digital channels?
Yeah, well, I think that what's really interesting is that the digital has been created, is actually built to address some of these concerns. The biggest one being, how do I actually find the right audience? Because multicultural audiences are nuanced, and you can't necessarily take a one-size-fits-all approach. And what's very interesting and great about digital is it allows you to kind of hone in and target specifically on the consumers that make most sense for your brand. So, we're seeing a lot of those marketers use that quite efficiently.
I would like to add to what Susan is saying. She mentioned something that the multicultural consumer is very nuanced, it's very complex. And, we all know that as marketers, what we need to do is to, serve the right message to the right people at the right time in the right context. And one of the beauties of digital is that you can actually do this in a very accurate way. So in our case, what we do is we leverage data to uncover the opportunity, and most importantly, to actually generate return that it's helping on the revenue of that company. So on one side, I would say nowadays many advertisers understand that digital is a huge component of whatever the marketing effort. This is not something that is happening on the general market alone. This is happening across all multicultural segments. Again, we are doing online video, social, search, programmatic, mobile. We're measuring everything we do, and as part of these digital initiatives, Hyperlocal is part of that.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Susan, are there strategies, digital strategies, that you think are currently being overlooked?
Yes, I think hyperlocal. We started talking about digital overall, and hyperlocal specifically is very, very interesting, because what it allows you to do is essentially kind of, hone in on neighborhoods and these audiences in a way that you never have been able to do before. So it probably makes sense to kind of, level set the team and the group here as to what exactly hyperlocal is, because it's a subset of digital. You can serve an ad or reach customers, across any type of format in mass, but hyperlocal is really a strategy, and it's a different way to do that. So what it is digital advertising that applies neighborhood-level precision to local, regional, or national campaigns. In short, it's the way to reach customers you want, but you can do it at scale. And to bring this to life, I'd like to explain a little bit more about how hyperlocal works with an example, and I'd like to contrast how hyperlocal differs from some of the more traditional approaches to local advertising. So if we were to kind of advance here to the next area, the best way to do this is through an example. So the example I'll use here is, let's say there's a customer, and that customer is selling organic breakfast bars, for example, an advertiser, and they're looking to increase sales in and around the DMA market of Philadelphia. So a traditional approach here would require you to serve advertising or target the entire DMA. And now some of that advertising would actually be directed at the right customers, and by right, I mean those with the highest likelihood of purchasing that product at the stores, but some of it would not. So let me contrast this with a hyperlocal approach. So if we were to advance here, a hyperlocal approach would look a little bit like this. Okay, so hyperlocal would, let's go back just one, hyperlocal would view that entire DMA, that one DMA, as a collection of neighborhoods. This is the neighborhood approach. So Philadelphia doesn't look like one. It looks like 848 neighborhoods, to be exact. And at max point, we call these neighborhoods digital ZIFs. And what this does is it increases your ability to reach large amounts of consumers, which is really a requirement if you're looking to move the needle on something in store for a product like this. But I'd like to say that it's really important to note that just being hyperlocal, I've kind of explained what it is and what it looks like, but just being hyperlocal isn't going to be enough. So what you have now is you have a choice of 848 geographies that may or may not make sense for your product or your audience. The ability to do that isn't much better than buying one if you don't really know which neighborhoods actually matter. And by knowing which neighborhoods matter and knowing where those audiences are, the nuances of those audiences, that's really what you need to do to be able to target most effectively. So you need intelligence. So a more strategic, or the most strategic use of hyperlocal is to actually look at these 848 and understand what's going on in these neighborhoods, understand the ethnic composition of these neighborhoods, understand their buying, their purchasing behavior, and what's in their cabinets to really select. And if I were to advance this one more time, if we were really taking a look at what's going to drive sales for this customer, I would not select 848 of these. I would select a subset of that. And it's actually the ability to select those right neighborhoods that's critical to drive your program success, because those neighborhoods are diverse. And that's something that hyperlocal can do in a way that regular digital cannot possibly do. So the ability to do this really requires strong technical knowledge and a platform that is designed to actually look at the world not as one, not as 848, but as the right 848.
Okay. Susan, why do you think this is a strategy that works better? And also, how efficient would this be for small local campaigns?
Well, actually, it's not just for small local campaigns, and that's actually something that's quite important. The beauty of hyperlocal is that it actually does scale. So if I were to go back to the example that we just talked about, that bar very well could be sold nationally. So while we looked at that Philadelphia example, if we wanted to scale this across the entire country, what we would do is continue to find groups of these consumers within a region, if it's a regional campaign, and then continue to add even more across the entire country if it's a national campaign. So a national campaign would select not from the 800 plus neighborhoods that we looked at in Philadelphia, but you see a collection in the case of MaxPoint of 44,000. So essentially, you can apply this concept across the entire country to reach your goals, and the point is that you have large groups of consumers, but it's built up from a hyperlocal base.
So I would like to add to what Susan is saying, is that in the case of Group M and the way we're working with MaxPoint is we start from the idea that as an agency, we leverage purchase-based targeting, contextual targeting, lookalike modeling, and the whole point of doing that is to actually hit the right audiences, to engage with the right audiences. One important thing to say here is that today, digital is probably, I would say, actually the only channel that allows you to do that. When you apply that same kind of analysis and qualifiers to go into a local level and a hyperlocal level, and you can identify the profiles that are actually responding to your campaign in a very, very targeted area, then you can take that profile and look for people that are similar to those and apply them at a national level. So even though you might start with local campaigns, very hyper-targeted, the whole point is that you get so many learnings out of that that it makes very easy to then extrapolate that and expand into a national level. So if we think about one of the principles of programmatic today, which is, finding the proxy of a consumer and then look for people that are similar to them and hit them in whatever the place they are going, with Hyperlocal, you're basically doing the same, starting from a very small kind of neighborhood, I would say, and then you go to whatever the place you want in the United States. So again, it's great to understand who's reacting to your campaign, what kind of message is resonating, you can even talk about which language is actually working better, and then bring this to a whole different level when you move into a national campaign.
Yeah, it really does give you the ability to kind of uncover insights and uncover information that you may not have seen, kind of originally. It's unique in that way.
I see. So yes, that definitely is an answer to how you can go from local to a national, very scalable campaign. When you look at other solutions like cookie-based targeting or other options, what distinguishes Hyperlocal from these other options?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of benefits that you get with Hyperlocal. It's a much more efficient way to spend your money. So the example that I showed earlier, if you were going to target that entire DMA, there's a lot of wasted advertising. So when you're doing a hyperlocal approach, you're only targeting the neighborhoods that make the most sense for you. So there's definitely an efficiency play there. Scale is another big one. So the advantage of a properly designed and technical hyperlocal solution is scale. So a cookie-based solution or one-to-one, actually narrows your customers, and particularly that gets even smaller when you're talking about discrete, smaller geographies. So at MaxPoint, our clients are using us as a way to reach large groups of consumers in very small geographies. So you can do that, but it's not in a one-to-one manner. So it's another way of saying that it's scale. So a cookie-based solution, if I were to kind of contrast another reason why it would make more sense for that breakfast customer that I talked about earlier, is that there are certain sets of products out there that don't leave a digital footprint. So a cookie isn't going to allow you to find that person. So I may not be, going to a breakfastbar.com's website to, kind of research the product or look at the product in the same way that I might for some other categories. So a neighborhood level approach or a hyperlocal approach that can find the consumers who are interested in such a thing, but they're not necessarily, going to a website so you can cookie them, is really unique, because if you're looking, again, to move lots of product in small discrete areas, you're not going to be able to find enough cookies to kind of do that in mass. And I touched on this a little bit earlier in terms of what's really unique about Hyperlocal is, and Gonzalo built on that, is the fact that the insights from doing campaigns like this or programs like this really help you uncover, untapped opportunities for growth by understanding, what is really going on within the neighborhoods that are responding to those ads, and how do you funnel those insights back throughout your organization and really, kind of use it as market research in a way. It's really quite compelling, and it's a very strategic use of Hyperlocal.
We have many national brands and client-side marketers in this webinar, and related to this, what type of answers, and particularly as it relates to multicultural and Hispanic marketing, what type of answers, or better put, questions, can Hyperlocal help marketers achieve to answer?
It really helps you.
Specific levels of concentration. Yes, Susan.
Levels of acculturation, yes. Well, again, this is the beauty of digital and of Hyperlocal, is that, yes, you can see, who specifically is, what is the acculturation level of the types of people who are responding to your ads, where are they coming from? Should I tailor, or how can I tailor my marketing message to specifically respond to them? Because, again, multicultural audiences are nuanced. You can tailor that message based on what you're kind of getting back. But some of the questions that are really interesting are the questions that people maybe didn't even start out asking. So, and what I mean by that is, are there ways that using Hyperlocal and using digital really helps you uncover these pockets of growth? And it really is, the clients who are kind of using it in the most strategic way is really understanding those audiences, so coming up with insights. So the example that I'll use, and a lot of times this happens, quite frankly, when multicultural consumers were not even the original target. So, there have been cases where general market campaigns have been run, and what comes out is the target wasn't even necessarily a multicultural audience, but the responses that we've seen, those pockets kind of have shown us that it should have been. And by taking that insight back, you can say, okay, well, I wasn't even necessarily looking to get that kind of response rate, but I found a pocket of growth within this audience that really makes sense to kind of dig a little bit deeper in. And how exactly do I do that? Again, you can layer in what you know about how that particular nuanced audience will respond to that advertising. So it's really quite interesting, because it's a way for especially the people on the phone here to kind of make that case that there should be more dollars funneled into multicultural marketing, and you're not necessarily giving it the focus that it deserves.
And I think Susan is making a great point. And I'm pretty sure that we have a lot of people from the agencies now on the webinar, and I shouldn't say this because we guys compete, but at the end of the day, I'm going to say it anyway because it's all about growing the market. So what we're doing with MaxPoint actually is using MaxPoint and the information that is coming out of the campaigns we're having with them as actually a new business tool. And the way we're doing this, and as Susan explained before, when we know that there's a general market campaign running, what we do with MaxPoint is we look at the results that they are getting, and then we try to understand who are the different people that are actually reacting to these campaigns. And we have actually one very specific case with a personal care brand that did not have a specific Hispanic budget, but what we saw through MaxPoint is that actually Hispanics were responding better, even though they were not being targeted specifically. And that was the way for us to go to the client and say, if you're doing this and you're having this level of response without having anything that is actually, let's say culturally relevant for this consumer, what if we actually take some of the money and we put it with a very specific message, trying to connect with consumer insights that we know that they are very relevant to this consumer. We actually did it, and the response was actually much higher than the previous campaign, and it was an amazing success story for the client. So for those agencies out there that are participating in this webinar, talk to MaxPoint, use MaxPoint, get those campaigns that your counterparts on the general market are running, check if they are getting good results on the Hispanic market, make the case with that, go back to your counterpart on the general market, and it would be very weird, I would say, if they do not realize that they actually need to invest with specific efforts on the Hispanic market. And again, I'm not trying to sell the idea of language here. I'm talking about probably it's a matter of tweaking the message and make it more culturally relevant, or highlight those consumer insights that we know are going to engage and resonate with the Hispanic consumer, and use that in order to get much higher results than what you're already getting.
Yes,
That's great.
Gonzalo and Susan, you were talking about ways that general market campaigns show that the Hispanic or the multicultural consumer is particularly would be a particularly good target if he was approached more, or he or she was approached more, or targeted more. In terms of, so to say, the other way around, campaigns that already are multicultural or multicultural targeted, what do you have any success stories to tell about these?
Absolutely. I can give you one. I can give you one example that kind of comes to mind on my side, and it was a campaign that was in the telecom sector, and it was specifically targeting the Asian American audience. And what they were asking us to do was specifically, kind of how do we get more customers that are of Asian American descent, and within that's a nuanced audience clearly. So we were targeting and finding and communicating with those audiences in ways that were specific to those neighborhoods, finding those neighborhoods, and the message itself was tailored there. What the outcome of this was again, I mentioned earlier, one of the benefits here is efficiency of spend. So, kind of if you were to compare what savings they essentially got, we reduced their customer acquisition costs by approximately, over 60%. It was, I think exactly 63%. And the way that we were able to do that was, again, kind of reducing the amount of spend that they would typically need to do, and essentially getting their costs down quite substantially.
Gonzalo, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that again, success goes very close to the KPIs that you defined previous to putting the campaign out there. Susan just mentioned, for example, in this case, that they improve the cost per acquisition. Some of the times they're talking about cost per click, and other times they're talking about completion, and other times they're talking about level of engagement and stuff like that. So I think success depends on what KPIs you have. I think what is important to highlight with Hyperlocal is the amount of learnings you can get and how you can use those learnings to then go to the next round and actually do it better. So, and again, learnings could be, and you mentioned something before about what are the benefits of Hyperlocal. With Hyperlocal, you can try a lot of things that you can actually do also at a national level, but you can do it in a much more efficient way, because instead of putting something out there that it's telling you, well, I don't know, whatever, this message is resonating more than the other one, you can actually do this in a much targeted, much more reduced environment, and then extrapolate this the other way. For us, again, as I said before, we are not using only MaxPoint for our campaigns, but we are also using MaxPoint as a new business tool, and we are actually engaging very much the Max Point team with our marketing analytics team. And funny enough, that it's not related to any of these specifics teams. It's more about how we identify relevant case studies with relevant insights in order to then go and make the case. On the other hand, you can try here and see if one language is responding better than the other one, if one creative is resonating more than the other one. And as I mentioned before, we have this case study with this personal care brand where, coming from a general market campaign, we ended having a very important investment on Hispanic, because we got not only a nice response level, but also a whole bunch of insights in why these people were answering. So we could tweak the message, make it very specific, and then move into that target that was actually responding at a better pace than the general market or non-Hispanic consumer.
And actually, let me build on that, because you talked a little bit about getting the kind of tweaking message and getting learnings. One of the benefits of doing all of this in a programmatic fashion is that you're doing all of that essentially in real time. So you're getting learnings that are happening, as your campaign is running. It's not like you wait for the campaign to be over and then decide to, kind of take a different strategy. You have the opportunity to alter that strategy as the campaign is running, because you're getting learnings. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of digital, and the bigger beauty of programmatic digital is that those are coming all in real time. So you're kind of shaping those outcomes and learning from those outcomes to get even better outcomes that you don't have to wait for until the end.
Right. So, Susan and Gonzalo, what do you think is next in terms of hyperlocal? What is the next big thing going to be? Technologies develop so fast. Where do you see, trends in hyperlocal advertising, digital advertising going?
I would say that hyperlocal is part of where this is going, but nowadays we are looking at measuring whatever we do, and measuring it's not just talking about, again, click-through rate or engagement and completion. We're talking about what is the impact of what we do against sales. I said at the very beginning of the conversation that one of the things that I've heard from many marketers is that they really want to know how their marketing efforts are actually contributing to the overall goals of the company. And that means that we need to measure everything we do, and measurement needs to come from transactional data. So today we need to talk about how whatever we do, again, at a hyperlocal level or from a digital perspective or even from any other channel, to really understand what are the consumer insights that we are using, what are the triggers that are working, what is the behavior of the different consumers, how we engage with these people, how these people consume media, which media is relevant for them depending on the situation and the goal we are trying to achieve, plus the transactional data that is supporting whatever we've done. Because again, if we do a campaign and we don't know how the results are from a sales perspective, it's going to last for a while, but it's not going to last forever. We need to be very realistic today that if we do any kind of marketing effort, it has to pay back, and that payback is about selling a product or a service, and that's what clients are trying to achieve. Of course, we have some cases where it's all about, building awareness or, creating top of mind, but at the end of the day, we all sell something, and I think that is where the next big thing is coming. The next big thing is how we analyze massive amount of data coming from things like Max Point with hyperlocal information, how we can take decisions in real time, analyze that data that is coming from tons of different sources, and then put a strategy together that is actually responding to that data and measuring what we are doing from a sales perspective.
Yeah, and if I would have answered the question very similar, in that, and I can't say it's next. It's kind of something that we've been doing here, at Maxim from the beginning. But it's the measurement piece of it, right? Because you're making a business case in anything, whether it be multicultural marketing or any marketing. I mean, the bar is, did my program generate results? And in our case, it's did that program generate results within a particular store? So I think it's more of that. I think it's combining those measurable results with the insights that are generated from these programs. And the third thing I would say is, and this is what Gonzalo and his team has been doing, is really kind of this theme of using your media dollars not just for media and not just to target, but really as a market research tool, as he's been using, and really using it as a way to build your business and assist the entire portfolio in moving that business locally and measuring that business locally.
There has been some comments and content in trade media on on the overall issue or trends in programmatic, and some point out that there is a certain amount of waste, which in sometimes is quite big. This is my question, and we are going to ready then after this the questions of the many questions of the audience. How can sort of like the waste amount of some of these campaigns, how maybe you can qualify, and probably these are more on cookie-based targeting, but I just wonder how can this be diminished?
Waste in terms of
waste in terms of that a substantial amount of the intended target is not reached, and other constituents are reached that are not necessarily the primary target of the brand.
I think that if you are doing programmatic the right way, you can actually reduce that waste significantly. If you work with a private exchange, you know who you are, where you're placing your campaign, even under a programmatic format. So I think the issue that we have with programmatic is that it's kind of understood by, let's buy that cheap stuff that is out there that no one wants. So I'm generating a whole bunch of eyeballs someplace, and in real life you're buying a lot of stuff that it's not that worth it. Now, if you move from that format into a private exchange programmatic format, now you know what you're buying, there's a negotiation behind, there's a relationship between the publisher and the agency in this case, so you can actually place the ad where you want to have that ad, and the whole targeting piece is very well thought and very well discussed between the agency and of course the client and the publisher. So I think we are getting into a different discussion, which is how programmatic may or may not generate waste. I think that nowadays, and again, we can do this, for example, with MaxPoint, where we can discuss before the campaign is out there what kind of publishers we're going to be using, and then you apply the hyperlocal piece into. So again, I think there are layers in how you keep adding things, and that is kind of the beauty of putting hyperlocal as another layer into design.
Let me comment on
Okay,
that.
thanks, Gonzalo.
Yeah, it actually it's related to kind of this whole concept of measurement, right? So it's, to me, it's did your program have the intended result? And it's actually one of the reasons why measuring the outcome, meaning lift in sales, really makes a difference, because did somebody look at your ad, or what site was it on? I mean, again, this is the beauty of being able to measure it. So if your intended outcome is I actually want sales to increase by 5% or 10%, there's no way to kind of hide around was there waste or was there not. I mean, did sales actually rise at those stores in that particular geography? So I see it less as, it's not an issue, it's not a programmatic versus not programmatic. It's, what is the outcome that you're truly trying to drive? And, in our case here at MaxPoint, it is the sales piece of it. So, you're kind of released by looking at particular sites or particular, publishers, which we will do all of that, right? But it's all in support of that end result or that end outcome, as opposed to, I want to, I have this particular set of sites work for me, and this particular set of sites don't. It's kind of a what is that end outcome, and what are all of the different levers that I can push to get to that right outcome.
Thanks, Susan. We have the first question from our audience, and the question is, which are the best tools and platforms to implement a hyper-local marketing strategy?
You specifically like within platforms, I can kind of say Hyperlocal, specifically here at MaxPoint, you could do that across a number of different platforms. So for us, it's display, video, mobile is a fantastic way to do it. So the delivery of the actual promotion can be done across multiple platforms, and it's really finding the right audiences, and the delivery mechanism is as any of the above.
Yeah, I think we need to, and I don't know how the original question is, but you don't need any specific tool to make this work, by the way. So it's not that you need to have an application or whatever in your system in order to make this work. The way we operate is through MaxPoint, and they are the ones that take care. Then what kind of things you can do through Hyperlocal, it's what Susan was saying. And we've seen, as she mentioned, mobile being great. But again, I don't know how the question was made, but you do not need a specific tool to run all this.
Okay, thank you, Susan and Gonzalo. We're going to look at the next question from an audience member. What considerations should brands have top of mind when moving towards a total market strategy without losing multicultural reach?
Wow. I think that is much broader than Hyperlocal, but I would put it this way. Everyone is talking about total market. I think that there are 3,000 different definitions of total markets, and I'm not going to go into the definition of total market now, but the whole point of total market is to understand which things a group of consumers have in common and which things are the nuances we need to take into account to communicate with some of the subgroups within that bigger group. Now, I think the best way to look at this is when you put a strategy up there, you look at all the consumers as one, and when you have that in mind and you understand what the opportunity is from the different segments, you are having a total market strategy, but you're also talking specifically to the different groups that are multicultural or that they have some kind of cultural relevancy kind of behavior that we want to ignite in them with our campaign. I don't know how that is related to Hyperlocal, to be honest, but I think this is going to how not to lose money when we move into total market, because, and I think this is coming from, well, everyone talks about total market and what is happening, I'm losing my multicultural budgets. Well, that is wrong, and the way to look at this is there are consumers out there, they're not multicultural consumers and non-multicultural consumers. The goal of a brand is to engage with consumers. It's not to engage with one kind of consumers. It's to engage with consumers that represent the larger opportunity. Now, if within those consumers, there's some of them that are Asian or Hispanic or African American or none of them, let's say white Americans, well, now we need to put a message in different ways to each of them to engage with the different nuances. Sorry, Susan, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, so it's more like, you know, how do you properly engage with consumers, period. So, and you have the ability to do that and tailor that message in a way that makes most sense for that audience.
Thank you. We have another interesting question, this one more related to hyperlocal advertising, and it is, how does hyperlocal advertising complement more traditional advertising like television, radio, or print?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question, and we've kind of seen some customers that have again, you know, done it very strategically in combining hyperlocal digital with another medium. So it all goes back to, again, what the end goal of the customer is and what's the most efficient way to do it. So this particular program that I remember, it actually combined direct mail and digital as well. And what we saw was, for this, I think it was insurance, I believe, an insurance category. But for this particular customer, when you layered on direct mail on top of digital, they actually saw even higher results, higher response rates by, you know, combining the two together. So it's really, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It really, again, goes back to what the customer is looking to do. But, you know, essentially it helps you complement other approaches that you're doing depending on those end outcomes and depending on what areas you're looking to target.
Let's see. Another question, Susan and Gonzalo, is Maxpoint then attaching census profiling to mobile and digital responses for each of the digital zip codes?
There's a variety of data and sources that we look at. Census is one of many. It's one look, but because these neighborhoods are so rich, you kind of have to look at a variety of different sources, a lot of which are you know, kind of proprietary to Maxpoint. That's kind of like a starting point and base. That's a really, really good one. But, you know, kind of how do you layer on top of that in a way to understand really what's going on in those neighborhoods, not just from a population, excuse me, not just from a population standpoint, but a consumption standpoint. So, you know, what are the purchases that are going on within a particular neighborhood? What kind of cars do they drive? You know, what brands are they looking at? You know, what content are they consuming? I mean, it's really a full picture of a consumer, of which census is one part.
Thank you, Susan. There's another audience member who is asking for success stories. He's asking, or she, give us a good example of a good hyperlocal campaign. How do you measure it? How many hits? And what media outlets did you use? Or also, obviously, right?
Well, I can give another example of you know, how you would actually measure something. And again, this example, I'm not going to say one, you know, how many hits, because this campaign will be specific around, you know, say sales, for example. So there was a dental brand. Toothpaste, I believe, is what they were looking to do. They were looking to increase sales really within a handful of stores, a handful of banners in the Northeast. So, you know, again, typical as we kind of talked earlier around, you know, finding which neighborhoods actually were purchasing that category overall, and of that category, which neighborhoods were not purchasing the brand that was our customer. So it was actually kind of a conquesting example, I would say. So we kind of looked at that and delivered that particular those particular audiences, the ones that had shown propensity. It's literally, who are the consumers that have showed a high likelihood to purchase that brand, and which consumers are have the ability to go into the stores that are having that particular sales issue. So what we saw there was we did see a lift in sales, and the methodology that we use in doing that is a test and control methodology. So we are selecting stores that received advertising and then selecting stores that did not receive advertising to compare and contrast those two sets of stores to see what the lift in sales was directly due to that campaign. And we did see a lift, and that lift was a positive one. And that was, just to comment on the media outlets, that particular campaign was mobile and display.
Yeah, and I would like, sorry, Marcos. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to mention that you had talked about an example before. Maybe you can expand on that related to this question. Yes.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about that. So again, as I said before, each campaign has different KPIs. In this case, again, we were coming from some findings that were not part of the original KPIs, which was, is there any kind of specific audience that is responding? So none of these qualifiers had their Hispanic as part of them. We actually found that, and then we put our own Hispanic-driven campaign for these guys. And we had, besides the regular, click-through rate and, people that were engaging with one of the videos for X amount of time, which, again, you can measure as engagement, we added two specific metrics to that campaign. And one was people that would click and go into the product's website, and the other one was for people to ask for a sample. Again, we are talking about a personal care product that it's not the kind of thing that you're talking to, or your family you're buying. So we knew that it was important for this audience to have a kind of one-on-one communication, but also to try the product. So we added to the regular measurements these two things, and the visits to the website were great, and the number of samples that were requested by the people were really, really high. We did, to be honest, we did not have a specific number because we had no idea the reaction we were going to have, and it was the first time that we were actually doing something of this style. But again, I think the success story here is there was nothing related to the multicultural consumer. All of a sudden, we find that the multicultural consumer is responding to this campaign, engaging with the product, trying to find out more about it. Then we put a specific multicultural campaign in place, and we had really good, click-through rates. Of course, we did a lot of optimization during the process in order to engage more people, knowing who was, clicking and who was engaging. And then we had really good results when people began asking for, getting a sample.
Thank you, Gonzalo. We definitely have covered a very big subject, a very important subject in marketing in general. As you say, brand's obligation or brand's task is to address consumers, not necessarily multicultural consumers. Susan, also thank you very much. The audience should know that the questions that have not been answered yet will be answered via email. I also recommend that you ebook to learn more. The ebook is about the multicultural marketing field guide. Experts discuss the key trends and trends and strategies for today's advertisers. You can download this on the URL you see on your screen, maxpoint.com/fieldguide. As I said before, this conversation is ongoing. We will, among other things, publish the last feature article on hyperlocal digital advertising on Portal Online. We will also have in-person conversations at our annual conference on September 16 and 17. And we're definitely open to any additional questions you may have, and we will definitely will forward them to Gonzalo and Susan. I wanted to thank you again, and all acquaintances and friends on the other line, and particularly Max Point and Gonzalo Belfa and Susan Lee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, and I hope we can do this more often.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Have a nice afternoon.